All aboard the ghost train. Believe if you dare. New at Thorpe Park Resort.
Right, I'm gonna say it now. Ghost Train at Thorpe Park is not as bad as everybody makes it out to be. Welcome to my video essay little rant thing in defense of Ghost Train at Thorpe Park. Now, first of all, there are going to be spoilers in this video about the ride experience, so if you have not yet experienced Ghost Train at Thorpe Park and you are looking to do so in the future, maybe skip ahead. Actually, watching this video back, this video is literally just entirely spoilers, so if you've not ridden Ghost Train, just skip this video entirely. Okay, thanks, love you, bye. Okay, so first of all, the exterior of the attraction is phenomenal. It's fantastic, and this is something that Derren Brown's Ghost Train back in 2016 and beyond got absolutely right as well. One of the very few things that Derren Brown's Ghost Train got right, but it absolutely nailed. What the park set out to do here was to create a late modern era train station building, which is a bit of a task considering Derren Brown's Ghost Train was supposed to be in the Victorian era. Obviously, the park had a limited budget this time for Ghost Train, and therefore they couldn't just demolish the whole building and build something a little bit more up to modern standards, so they just opted to paint the exterior instead. And I must admit, I was quite the critic myself when I first saw on the pass holder group the pictures of the park painting it in this white and blue colour scheme. I thought it didn't quite fit the aesthetic of the rest of the Victorian building, but now with the aging and stuff, I think it works really well. Also in the queue line, you have lots and lots of retro posters, a recall to Thorpe Park's past. So you have posters such as Loggers Leap, Canada Creek, and lots more. So next time you're in the queue line for Ghost Train, keep an eye out because there are some absolute gems in there. One slight gripe that I have with the queue line, however, is the constant reoccurring safety announcements. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I know the purpose and I know that they have to be there. I just find that it's a little bit repetitive, especially when Ghost Train isn't exactly fantastic at eating through crowds. For example, on opening day, I was in that queue for over 3.5 hours. And with those safety announcements going off every, I'd imagine, 15 to 20 minutes, it gets pretty jarring pretty quickly. This is something that Derren Brown's Ghost Train also struggled with. Eating through those crowds, that ride has never been fantastic at. And then once you finally get through the queue line, you make it into the pre-show, which again is something that Derren Brown's Ghost Train also did exceptionally well. You get ushered in and then the pre-show starts. It uses a Pepper's Ghost effect, which basically projects this ghost of this character called Angelus Mortis onto the screen, but it actually looks like he's there in the room with you. Granted, Derren Brown's Ghost Train did this effect a little bit better in my personal opinion, but Ghost Train still does it pretty well. The pre-show then basically sets out what to expect in the ride experience. So, we're introduced to this character called Angelus Mortis, whose name translates to the Angel of Death in Latin, and it then talks about this group of people called the Believers, who basically believed in the afterlife and believed in immortality. The story then basically sets out that this group of the Believers travelled to Chapel Station and then essentially performed some kind of seance. This ritual went wrong, and it then killed all of the Believers, and therefore the station since then has been closed. You're then asked, would you like to take the last train? To which the shutters then fall down on the windows around you, and then your fate is essentially sealed. You're taking the last train. But will you stop at Chapel Station? Angelus Mortis then talks about, well, how does he know about the Believers and how does he know what happened on that fateful night, before then revealing that he was there in spirit. And that's pretty much where the pre-show ends. And then you're taken round the corner up to pre-show 2. Now, the length of time that you spend in pre-show 2 is basically determined on the group in front of you. If there's a hold-up with the group in front of you, you could be waiting in here for anything from like 5 to 10, 15 minutes. However, in pre-show 2, it's not like there's not a lot to look at. There's plenty for you to look at. You have television screens that transmit weather reports, basically saying that things are getting hot. You can also have a look around you, and there's plenty of Easter eggs in this room. For example, you have one of the old VR headsets that used to be in the Derren Brown's Ghost Train attraction. And you also have a box full of actual Easter eggs. After a while, you then entered into the big room, and this is where, on Derren Brown's Ghost Train, a lot of people said that the attraction excelled. Now, the reveal isn't quite as grand as it used to be in Derren Brown's Ghost Train. For those of you that never rode Derren Brown's Ghost Train, essentially you went into the room and you saw right in front of you an old Victorian train carriage that had been suspended somehow from the ceiling by chains. Now, due to contractual agreements, the park were not allowed to keep this after the Derren Brown IP had ended, and so they had to come up with something different. Essentially, they opted for the fairly easy idea of just a train platform, but that's not to say that it's not still visually impressive, because it is. So there you are, you find yourself on platform 13. Now, you may notice that in this attraction there are plenty of Easter eggs, as I have already mentioned. If you look directly ahead of you as you go through those doors, you'll even see a sign that points towards platform 15. And platform 15, for those of you that have been to Fright Nights, will know used to be a scare attraction at the park. You then basically ushered onto the train, and this is where the actual ride, it's not really a ride, entertainment experience begins. The actors here do an exceptional job, and a personal shout out to Becca Wingate, who is the best Ghost Train actor, and I cannot fault her whatsoever. I'm not going to delve too much into this because it is just basically repetitive storyline stuff, and I feel like no matter how I explain this to you, I won't be able to portray exactly what happens in the attraction too well, so I'm just going to leave that up to you. However, you are on the train for about 5 minutes, I'd imagine, as it tells you a bit of a story and why you shouldn't stop at Chapel Station. Spoiler alert, the train stops at Chapel Station, because of course it does. You then get off the train, and much like Derren Brown's Ghost Train, you're on a new platform. This is, of course, Chapel Station. Still, again, very, very visually impressive. You then make your way down some corridors where there is a few props and a few actors, and by actors I mean literally just the people that are on your train, that give you some like jump scares as you walk to the crypt. Now, the crypt is a fantastic scene. This part, which used to be referred to as, I believe, the tunnel scene in Derren Brown's Ghost Train, is so much better than Derren Brown's Ghost Train. On Derren Brown's Ghost Train, I never really understood the reason for why you was in this tunnel building. I mean, I know that it's basically you were told to evacuate the train and it was a holding place, but the whole needing a code thing just didn't quite work on Derren Brown's Ghost Train to me.
Who are you people? What do you want from me?
You want the numbers.
Derren.
But the fact that it's more of like a tour and taking you to have a look at the crypt on this version of Ghost Train, I think works so much better. You then basically, again, told the story of the believers, and then one of the people from the train opens this crypt, which then gets him possessed. Things start moving, things start going wrong inside of the crypt, and this massive ghoul comes from overhead and flies over the top of you. It is a very, very visually impressive effect. However, I feel like the lighting on it could be a little bit better. However, the park have said over closed season this year, they are looking at adjusting some of these things. Like I say, then things start moving inside of the attraction, and then things start to go wrong, and then you're quickly ushered back onto the train. Again, I still feel like the actors in this experience absolutely do make the experience. However, I do find that the second half on this train experience is a little bit lackluster. It essentially covers everything that happened in portion 1. But after a little while, there is a fantastic, again, visually impressive effect in which some UV lights come on the train, and you see all of these symbols written in UV lights. It's very, very visually impressive if it's the first time that you've seen it. Things continue to go wrong for a little bit, and then you get the finale. I say finale because there is technically another finale after this, but all the lights go out, and then all of a sudden it's revealed that there are 2 nuns on the train. I remember doing this on opening day, and the costume that they had for the nuns was absolutely awful. It's like an Asda's Essentials Halloween costume. It looked really dreadful. But however, they have since replaced this now, where I believe they're using makeup effects and more impressive nun costumes, so it really sells the effects so much better. On the last few times that I've been to the park, there's only been 1 nun actor on the train, but that's fairly understandable because I tend to only go on the park on off-peak days, so I'm not expecting Ghost Train to be fully staffed all the time. They then play this fantastic bit bit of comedic relief that, again, I'm not going to spoil for you because it really is probably my favourite part of the whole ride experience, so I'm not going to spoil it for you, but just keep an eye out for it next time you ride Ghost Train at Thorpe Park, because it is fantastic. That's when you're lulled into a bit of a false sense of security, really. You expect that to be the end of the attraction. You expect to then walk off the train and then exit through the gift shop, and that's over. However, once you walk into the gift shop, you are told by somebody behind the counter that there's been a bit of a spillage up ahead, or there's some kind of issue with the on-ride photos, and that's why it's displaying some kind of like stock photos on the screens. But of course, this is just a ruse for the final jump scare in the attraction. Essentially, then the person behind the counter disappears, the lights start flickering, there's some rumbling noise, and then all the lights go out, and then all of a sudden you're presented on this stage with this possessed looking person wearing a cloak that basically reaches out and tries to grab into the audience whilst playing some like scary sound effects, I suppose. It works really well, and a lot of people that don't expect it, it really does get them, so it's always fantastic to see. But those of you that rode Derren Brown's Ghost Train will remember this anyway, so it won't really have an effect on them. However, the first time that I rode it, this next bit did catch me out. So obviously after that scare happens, the person disappears and it's almost like they were never there. This is where it ended on Derren Brown's Ghost Train. You were then ushered out, and then that was actually the end of the experience. However, on Ghost Train, they have since added in some of these. To be fair, they do look like cheap animatronic Halloween decorations. However, after a few seconds, there is total silence, and then almost like this screaming sound effect, and then they start shaking, which tends to get me every single time still. Even though I've done the attraction numerous times now, it still seems to get me because, like I say, I expect the scare experience to be finished after the actor on the stage disappears. Then after that, that really is the end of the experience. Now, those of you that are watching this video may think that's not all that impressive. However, my personal feeling is that I think it works for Thorpe Park. Granted, I still do think that Thorpe Park could do with a proper Ghost Train, one that is all out scare, just absolutely terrifying. The park are known as being the thrill capital of the country, so I feel like Thorpe Park is really the only park in the UK that could get away with an all out scare attraction, which is something that I kind of hoped would happen in the Cursor Altar Manor. However, I do still think that what they've done with the Cursor Altar Manor is absolutely fantastic. But yeah, I just feel like it's a little bit of a refreshing break from all of the other attractions at Thorpe Park. An actor-led experience, I think, is great. It kind of lends itself to the London Dungeons, or just the Dungeons brand in general. Ghost Train was actually designed by one of the lead creatives from the Dungeons, so a lot of people do compare it to the Dungeons, and I can totally understand why, because the experience does feel very, very Dungeons-esque. However, the good thing about it actually not being a Dungeons attraction means that there's no upcharge. So you're essentially having a Dungeons experience for the price of your entry ticket. Or if you've got an annual pass, nothing. Another bonus about the attraction that I have to say that also Derren Brown's Ghost Train, in my personal opinion, did fantastically was the breakdown sequence. Now, it's a little thing that I was slightly worried about when the park initially announced that they were closing Derren Brown's Ghost Train and making the new Ghost Train an actor-led experience. I was like, the reliability of Ghost Train has never been perfect. So the thought of an actor-led experience during those breakdowns, will it just not be a bit awkward? Like, how are they going to maintain the suspense? But the park have absolutely knocked the ball out of the park. You're basically put into this holding sequence where the audio continues, and there's still this element of lore that goes on even during the breakdown sequence. The actors continue to act possessed, therefore it still keeps you on edge, and almost the fact that the storyline doesn't progress all that much whilst you're in the experience kind of adds to the eeriness. You're like, what's going on here? Like, what's happening? I also think that the fake shop experience works so much better in this version of Ghost Train than it did on, I'll say, the later years of Derren Brown's Ghost Train. So those of you that rode Derren Brown's Ghost Train in kind of the early years of the attraction will know that the demon that presents itself throughout the attraction then makes its appearance in the end of the attraction. However, in the later years of the attraction, it was revealed by the park that basically the costume had broke. So how did the park get around this? They basically got some coughing actor in a white t-shirt and black trousers to just cough on the stage, which really didn't work. So I'm really glad to see that the parks have replaced this with something that's more in keeping with the lore of the attraction in this version of Ghost Train. However, this wasn't always the case, because on opening day of Ghost Train, I could see what they were trying to achieve, right? The actor that was behind the counter saying that there was an issue then came out on the stage. But the issue was the actor was dressed in their full Thorpe Park uniform, blue fleece and all, which kind of just felt wrong. I get that the intention was supposed to be that this Thorpe Park employee was possessed and was then trying to attack the riders, but that effect was kind of lost. It just looked like the actor that was supposed to be there was ill or something, and they just replaced them with this random Thorpe Park employee. It didn't work, but it's good to see that they replaced that effect very, very quickly following guest feedback. Now, I've talked about all of the positives and the things that I love about this attraction, so now it's time to talk about the negatives. But on the contrary to a lot of people that say that this attraction is awful, I don't have a very long list of negatives. Firstly, and I know that I said that the crypt is visually impressive, and I still do stand by this, but I do feel like there are a few modifications that could be made to the crypt scene in Ghost Train. First of all, I feel like there could be some low-laying fog inside of the crypt. Just a little bit of fog that just settles on the ground. I don't want it in the air, I want it literally just on the ground. Just enough so when you're stood in it, that it covers your shoes. So it kind of gives off this effect of you being stood in like this creepy abandoned graveyard kind of thing. I feel like it would up the atmosphere so much better, and it would just make it that next level of creepy. And also, it is essentially just a big black room. What they've done with it is better than what they've done with it in Derren Brown's Ghost Train, but I feel like it just needs a few more props here and there to just sell the fact that you're in this crypt. Also, I did touch on it a little bit earlier, but I do think that there needs to be some script changes in scene 2 on the train, because as I did mention, it is very, very similar to the story that's being told in scene 1, therefore it can be a little bit repetitive. But this is just up until the UV effect and the nuns come out. Everything before that could be scrapped, but everything after the UV effect I think works. Also on the train, I feel like the volume needs to be boosted. It is fairly quiet, and when a lot of the jump scares inside of the train relies on these audio effects, I feel like it being at the volume that it currently is just doesn't give it that jump scariness that it deserves. Perhaps the bass could be boosted, or there could be some subwoofers under the seats that gives like this impactful vibration feeling with the jump scares that would then sell the effect better. I also find that the timing on the jump scares is a little bit predictable, so I feel like maybe the breathing sound effect that plays before the impact jump scare sound effect could be maybe it could be customized, so every ride experience, the amount of breaths that happen could be more or less, therefore it's less predictable. I noticed it was on count of 3, I think there was 3 breaths, and then it was the jump scare, which I predicted in my head ahead of time, so it didn't really sell too much for me. But again, it's a very, very small space on that train, so I can see why there might be some limitations. And my final issue really is that there needs to be some sort of sense of movement on the train. Now, the park have already said that they looked into adding screens onto the train, but because of the clearance on the train and the actual building itself, there was not enough room for them to add screens into where the windows were. So the park basically opted to then just paint the windows black, which kind of works, but also there is literally no feeling of movement on the train all that much. The way that this could be circumnavigated, in my personal opinion, is through perhaps maybe some LED lighting effects. Those of you that have been on Nemesis Subterra at Alton Towers will know that they have that effect on the elevators as you go down to the base level. The lifts obviously don't move at all, however the LED movement combined with the vibration of the elevator floor really does sell the effect that you are moving. I can understand that this might be quite difficult to time up with the actual motion of the train itself, so they might not be able to do this. So another way that I feel like they could maintain a sense of movement is by adding maybe curtains over the windows. That way, with the natural motion of the actual motion platform, the curtains should then sway to and fro, which would then give more of an illusion of movement that just these painted black windows don't really give. So that's it really. I really do like Ghost Train at Thorpe Park, and I think a lot of the criticism for Ghost Train is unjustified. Don't get me wrong, Ghost Train at Thorpe Park is not great. It's not fantastic, but I think it does the job that it's set out to do. And for it to not be an all-out thrill attraction, I think does break up a lot of the rides at Thorpe Park really well. So I think that it kind of gives an experience that no other ride at the park gives, which is very, very warranted at a small park like Thorpe Park. Now, would I be sad to see this attraction disappear? Well, to be quite honest, I can't really see it lasting too long. Like I say, I can probably imagine it lasting another 5-ish years before they finally give up and replace it with something else. However, do I think that they should replace the attraction with a roller coaster or something? No. I think that that space is perfect for a dark ride experience. I would like them to go for more of a traditional dark ride. Like I mentioned earlier, I'd like it to be an all-out, terrifying ghost train in that area. I think would work perfectly. The building is huge, so you could fit a massive dark ride in there. It's just a shame that it's taken up mostly by this motion platform-based experience. Thank you so much for watching this not scripted, sit-down, rant-style video on Ghost Train and why I think it receives all this unjustified hate. I think it works. Let me know your thoughts of Ghost Train in the comments below, and I hope that you have enjoyed this first video on the channel. More videos like this to come, as well as some more documentary style videos coming on the way. Closed season for this channel is going to be huge, so please do hit that like, hit that subscribe button, and ring that notification bell if you'd like more videos like this. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, I'll see you soon.